Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're going to be taking a look at What Ho! Frog Demons, which is by Chris Bucolic and Luca Reyetz. Hopefully I have said his name correctly this time. This is the fourth book in the Marlinko Canton series. So Chris Bucolic has written 3 other books in this series, which I have reviewed previously on this channel. And they are, the first one, Slumbering Ursine Dunes, and then Fever Dreaming Marlinko, which is a great acid-fueled city supplement, and then Misty Isles of the Eld, which is full of weird extra-dimensional elves. So this is the fourth book in this setting of the Hill Cantons, which is Chris Bucolic's setting. And unlike the other ones, it doesn't focus on just one location and really flesh it out. Instead, it sort of fills in the rest of this particular canton, including a hex crawl, a bunch of generators for traveling and visiting villages, and a couple of short adventures. So it's sort of a mishmash of stuff, but great for filling out the empty spaces in between the other books. All of these books are available for review on my channel. I have reviews of all of them. And if you want to check this out for yourself, as always, there will be a link down in the description below. So let's check it out, what we get inside. Here is our back cover. Some of the writing was done by Luca, and he does the illustration for, I believe, all of it. And as usual, great illustrations. Luca is the same person in the middle of creating the ultraviolet grassland setting, which looks really fantastic, but is not quite out yet. I think the PDF is out, but the print version is still being kickstarted. Really looking forward to that. So welcome to Greater Marlinko. We have a great table of rumors, hearsay, and gossip of the rankest sort. The tone of all of these books is fairly high on the gonzo scale. So if that's something that you are into, this is probably a pretty good fit. If you like your books more serious in tone, it wouldn't be too hard to tone this stuff down. But there's a lot of in-jokes, there's meta humor, and that sort of thing, where it's just the setting is not taken super seriously. All sorts of more fleshed out rumors here. So interactions with major named NPCs or more thorough inquiries into happenings around Marlinko City proper warrant rolls below. So again, ties into the Marlinko City book that I've reviewed previously. You can get some really fleshed out story hooks here. We have the whole hex crawl right here. It would have been nice to have this a little bit earlier in the book. I like having any maps just early on so you can find them more quickly. But it is near the front here, and it has a quite large hex crawl with several of the other books' locations on it. So Slumbering Ursine Dunes are over here, the Fever Dreaming Marlinko is here, and the Misty Isles of the Eld are here. And there's a couple locations here that get fleshed out. So for example, this little town here has an adventure in here, and the Frog Demon Temple does as well. So Hexes of Interest, it goes through all of the important hexes, the ones that have names and interesting things in them, and fleshes them out and gives them more stuff to see there. Short little adventures, or adventure sites, rather, that you can use to throw more interesting things at the players. Big old heap of D12 Marlinko Canton encounters, so you can just roll up some fun stuff. Some road riffraff and other personages, some of which have shown up in previous adventures. So I believe Previd has before. He looks really familiar. He's a war bear that I think I've seen in another adventure by Chris Bucolic. We also have Reyeka. I mean, it's clearly Luca turned into an NPC. So the illustrator is in the book. Again, that's what I mean by not taking the tone very seriously. A variety of monsters you can run into as you wander about the hex crawl. Creatures fell and less fell. We got wereworms, we have robo-dwarves, norkers, vodniks. It has a Eastern European flair, which is a nice change of pace from the typical Western European fantasy that we see. It does mean, however, that most of the characters' names are very difficult to pronounce if you are just a Westerner who isn't used to the way that these words are phonetically spelled out. The author does a great job in actually giving you the pronunciation for most of them, but that's still going to be really tricky to remember that over the course of an entire adventure. I suspect a lot of people are just going to come up with their own pronunciations. So a bunch of weird sites include the Blood Apricot Orchard, Lady Vanda's Manor, an Eld crash site. So the Eld are the elves from another dimension, and they have like UFOs. So some of them have crashed there. You can check that out. A hill fort full of war bears, some shrines. This is a funny little thing that I saw on Reddit, I think, a long time ago. The Tree Maze of the Twisted Druid. So this is a honest-to-goodness dungeon tree or hedge maze that the author created when they were, let's see, 12 years old. And he reposted it. He found a copy of it and he put it online. And hilariously, it's now inside this book. He recognizes that it's somewhat self-indulgent, but you can easily get it for free. You can just download it and plop it in if you want. I think that's hilarious. Adventure site number 1, we have a frog demon temple. So this one is very deadly. There's a lot of traps that will outright kill you or maim your characters in one way or another. So if I was sending my players to this location, I would definitely give them a lot of warning about how deadly it is, right? Give them a lot of rumors, showing that people who go here tend not to come back again or come back with horrifying stories. Despite its high deadliness, it is, again, fairly silly. All of these maps are not done by Luca. I believe they are done by Carl Stierenberg, is I think how you pronounce his name. Who's another great illustrator. He did the Rad Hack. And yes, there is a trap here that looks like Kermit the Frog. We have the Inner Sanctum, where you can start meeting some of these aforementioned frog demons, which show up here and there throughout this book. We have a sub-level that includes, I think, a little area that's actually inside one of the hot hells. So there's the hot hell and the cold hell. Apparently the elves are from the cold hell. I'm not totally sure about the metaphysics surrounding the various hells. I kind of like how the author doesn't get into it too much. He just sort of mentions these things and it leaves you to flesh out what that means. Adventure Site 2, Beats for the Beat God, which is, of course, a joke about Warhammer. In this case, we have a manor in this little town on the southern edge of the Hex Crawl down here. And the lord of this manor and this little village is a fairly terrible person. And it looks like he killed off his wife, and her revenge on him accidentally summons a demon which possesses a beet growing in a beet field. And it grows larger and larger, and now it's a giant demon beet. And it is slowly taking over the village with its psychic powers, which is a hilarious concept. I love it. We have the Beat Spawn Infection Index. This is a common theme that Chris Carousing uses across all of his books, where there is an escalating rating of some sort, showing how the location changes over time and how things get worse and worse. In most of his other books, this infection index, or it has different names depending on the setting, can go up and can be brought down by the players. In this case, it can really only go up. It gets worse and worse and worse the longer this beat god is allowed to persist. If you kill it off, it simply ends the whole thing. Now, the great thing is that there are basic levels here. You got alpha, beta, gamma, delta as things get worse and worse, and the infection starts affecting the entire setting or possibly the entire world. Although, of course, as it gets really bad, the world is going to marshal greater and greater forces to try and take this guy down. But a lot of the locations throughout this adventure have different descriptions depending on what threat level the town is at. So as things get worse, the locations are going to change naturally as you go along. That's really cool. That does make things easier to run, and it makes it feel organic, where it's like things have gotten worse and players can actually detect it. The locations will be worse when they go back to them. So what happens if you get yourself infected? Some random encounters that you can run into, right? So each of them has like class 0, class alpha, class beta. So the different locations will change. Like this guy, for example. This is the Onionator, a sanctified anti-beat plant demon. It came from an alternate future to start the beginning of the end, landed in a farmer's field, naked and without armor. It was immediately set upon by a group of hogs and is now near death. So it's basically a Terminator, but he's an onion. all sorts of different encounters, all of which change over time. Here is a map of the fields around the manor. So you can do this as a point crawl, basically, going from location to location. There's different things that will be there. And of course, if you go to the manor itself, that is like a mini dungeon. It's actually mapped out with locations for each room. So this is quite in-depth, although, like I said, all of this isn't going to be relevant for each party, because it's going to depend on what threat level you happen to be at the time. Skipping ahead now to the actual hamlet and manor itself, we have a map here. We have the peasant cottages. Almost everything has something weird going on. There are very few just flat vanilla locations here. There's always something weird. There's something to interact with. There's a strange character with a quirk that wants something. You have weird items. There's just a lot of interactivity. Skipping ahead a little bit, we have Appendix A. And some of this stuff is some of my favorite material in this book. So this is the Bestiary and Frog Demon generator. So this is all of the stuff that you can throw into really any campaign set in this setting. You can use it with the hex crawl, or of course you can easily steal it for your own. And it even has these great little bits of lore, which are really just short little narratives. This one in particular is really funny. We have these Deodans, which are characters or creatures that were stolen from Jack Vance's Dying Earth novels. And the author actually got permission to use them. It was great to see stuff leaking in from these pulp fantasy novels that have inspired D&D so long ago. We have these guys, which I believe are half-breeds of hobbits or halflings and dwarves, often called quarterlings. We got your robo-dwarves, you got your vodniks, and wereworms. Now, my favorite part is probably Appendix B, which is the Bucolic village generator. So you get some great names for all of your villages. And then the really good stuff, which is the village quirks. So maybe they're horrific storytellers, they're rude beyond measure, and things get weirder and weirder and weirder as you go up. Rustic dwellings and their characters. Fun time misadventures in Marlinko villages. So you walk into a village and there's a 20% chance that walking in, there's just some mayhem going on. Something weird is happening. So it might be something as simple as the aftermath of a painful incident involving a dangerous nettle patch, poison ivy, a beehive, and a bravely undressed local youth choir. Like, who knows what that means? Or let's see, we have maybe villagers are holding a midwinter, midnight, mid-lake sausage and sour cabbage cooking festival. So things are never going to be dull when you're going from village to village. What this really reminds me of is playing The Witcher 3, right? Which has a fairly realistic setup where there's just lots and lots of villages fairly close together, which is typically how medieval farmlands were set up. You wouldn't have like them very far apart. You would have a main city, and then you'd have farmlands around it, and the farmlands would just be full of villages. But as you go from village to village, there's always something different about them. There's some quirk about them, and you get to know the people in them. And this does that really well. We have a carousing table, classic OSR carousing. So you can get drunk there, spend some money, get some XP, but there's going to be weird complications that come along with it. And that's the end. So this is a really great book. If you own the previous 3 books, so Misty Isles of the Eld, Fever Dreaming Marlinko, and Slumbering Ursine Dunes. If you have those already, then this is pretty much a must buy because it's going to flesh things out. It's going to allow you to travel between those locations and give you just a lot of supplemental material. If you don't own the 3 previous books though, I would actually hold off from buying this because it doesn't stand by itself quite as well. Although the village generator is really nice. I don't know if you want to buy the entire book for it. Instead, what I would recommend doing is waiting until all 4 of these books are collected in an omnibus. And I believe there are plans in motion to make that happen. So if you don't own any, I would wait for that. But I'm really happy to have this, and I'm sure I'm going to make use of a lot of the supplemental material in it. So that's it for my review of What Ho! Frog Demons. As usual, links down in the description below if this seems like something you would enjoy. But before I go, I need to thank all of my patrons. It's been a little while since my last review, and since then a lot of new patrons have signed up to help support the channel. In particular, people like Damien Geardiz, Michael Theorin, Jesse Ross, Go Miaushi, Saucin J. Selafor, Carl Flippen, Sarah Chapman, Dario Savoli, Andy Horton, James Shevlin, and Scott Jarvis. Sorry if I've mispronounced anyone's names, but thank you so much for joining the Patreon and keeping this whole channel going. I really appreciate the support, and it allows me to do a lot of stuff that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. That's it for my review today. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you guys next time.